You need to see this right now. What I'm about to tell you hasn't hit the tickers at Bloomberg. It isn't being whispered in the hallways of the New York Times. And the talking heads at CNN are currently reading from a script that was outdated 3 minutes ago. The world as you knew it, the world of undisputed American hegemony and Israeli security, just ended. While you were going about your day, the sky over the Levant turned a bruised, hellish orange, and the geopolitical tectonic plates shifted so violently that the dust won't settle for a generation. 3 minutes ago, a flash priority cable hit the desks at the Pentagon, and the silence coming out of the White House is deafening. The truth is harsher than anything you'll hear on the news. Iran has just launched a massive coordinated theater-level strike. Tel Aviv is in a state of absolute unmitigated panic, and millions are currently fleeing into the desert. But the most terrifying part isn't the missiles you see on the screen. It's what's happening in the water 3,000 miles away that the elites are desperately trying to hide from you. Look, I've spent my life in the trenches of military intelligence. I've sat in the booths at the CIA. I've analyzed theater-level movements of the Soviet Union, and I've inspected the weapons of mass destruction that the elites lied to you about back in 2003. I know when a narrative is being scrubbed. I know the smell of a cover-up, and right now the air in the Pentagon is thick with the scent of absolute panic. I will reveal the smoking gun, the specific piece of technology that the Pentagon is currently trying to classify as we speak, which explains why the U.S. Navy is currently standing down while Tel Aviv burns by the end of this video. But you have to stay with me, because if you don't understand the mechanics of what is happening in the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean right now, you are going to be blindsided when your bank account stops working 48 hours from now. Close your eyes for a second and try to visualize the sensory reality on the ground. Imagine the sound of 1,000 freight trains screaming through the sky. That's the sound of the Iranian Fatah hypersonics entering the terminal phase. The air in Tel Aviv smells like cordite, pulverized concrete, and the ozone of failing electrical grids. The horizon is flickering with the rhythmic mechanical pulse of interceptors detonating in the upper atmosphere, but there are too many. The sirens aren't just a warning anymore, they are a continuous mournful wail that vibrates in your marrow. Millions of people are jamming the highways, the smell of scorched rubber and panicked breath filling the air as the realization hits that the Iron Dome, the impenetrable shield, has reached its saturation point. In my time in military intelligence, we prepared for saturation attacks. We prepared for the big one. But what the data I am seeing from my sources reveals is something far more sinister than a simple missile barrage. This is Wave 55 of Operation True Promise, and it is being facilitated by a secret partner. While the missiles are falling on Tel Aviv, a massive Chinese-flagged container vessel, the COSCO Kunlun, has just crossed the jugular vein of the world, the Strait of Hormuz. On paper, it's carrying consumer electronics. In reality, it is radiating a signal so dense, so sophisticated, that it has effectively blinded every Aegis combat system within a 200-mile radius. The U.S. Navy isn't coming to save Israel because the U.S. Navy currently cannot see its own hands in front of its face. Stay with me, because the most shocking part of this, the actual payload that triggered the scramble at the National Security Council, is coming in just a moment. Think about the technical specificity here. The U.S. Navy relies on the SM-3 interceptor and the Aegis system to project power. But as I've analyzed theater-level conflicts for decades, I've seen that every system has a breaking point. The Chinese have provided Iran with what we call a quantum sentry array hidden inside those shipping containers. This isn't a small-scale jamming pod. This is high-energy, wide-spectrum interference that targets the very heart of the Navy's cooperative engagement capability. The Mach 7 signatures we're seeing aren't just missiles. They are spoofing signatures. Our radar screens are showing 10,000 ghost targets. We are firing multi-million-dollar interceptors at shadows while the real Iranian Kyber missiles are slipping through the gaps. The math doesn't work for us anymore. The elites in the Beltway will tell you we have the technological edge. They are lying. They are looking at the same data I am, and they are terrified. Now we have to talk about the escalation. This isn't just a tactical strike on Tel Aviv. This is a stress response loop that leads directly to your front door. If the U.S. cannot intervene because of the Chinese electronic veto in the Strait of Hormuz, the regional war expands to a global scale instantly. The Houthis in Yemen, the militias in Iraq, and Hezbollah in Lebanon have all received the go signal. We are looking at a total regional conflagration, and when the smoke clears, the first thing to die won't be a soldier, it will be the dollar. If the Strait of Hormuz is closed by this Chinese digital shield, the price of oil doesn't just go up, it teleports. We are talking about $200 a barrel by Monday morning. For you, the American consumer, that means $15 gas at the pump. But it's worse than that. The petrodollar, the very foundation of American prosperity, is tied to the free flow of oil. If the U.S. Navy cannot guarantee the safety of the strait because a Chinese container ship has turned off our sensors, the Saudi-U.S. security pact is dead. If that pact dies, the dollar ceases to be the world's reserve currency. Your 401k, your savings account, the equity in your home, it's all denominated in a currency that is backed by the belief that we can control the world's energy. 3 minutes ago, that belief was proven to be a fantasy. I feel a sense of insider pride in being able to bring this to you, but it's tempered by a profound patriotic anger. The grief I feel for our troops is immense. We are sending them into a kill box with outdated doctrine and arrogant leadership. I'm talking about young Marines on the USS Abraham Lincoln, men and women who believe they are defending freedom, while the elites use them as pawns in a game they've already lost. They are sitting on ships that are currently blind and deaf. Think about that. You're in the middle of the most volatile waterway on Earth, and your screens are blank. You're waiting for a Mach 10 impact that you won't even see coming. Think about the psychological state of the decision makers in the Pentagon right now. Imagine the war room. It's dimly lit. The large screens are showing signal loss across the Persian Gulf and the Eastern Mediterranean. General officers are shouting over each other, trying to figure out how to explain to the president that the most powerful navy in the history of the world is currently being held at bay by a merchant vessel and a swarm of $50,000 drones. They are terrified of the escalation ladder. If they fire on that Chinese ship, they start World War III with a nuclear power. If they don't, they let Israel fall and the dollar die. They are paralyzed. And in that paralysis, the unthinkable nuclear scenario is moving from a possibility to a probability. Stay with me, because I'm about to reveal the specific piece of intelligence that the mainstream media is currently under a D notice not to report, the actual contents of the Kunlun's central hold that makes it a veto on American power. Let's go into the logistics of the Iranian attack. This wasn't a performative strike like we saw in the past. This is a multi-axis integrated operation. They are using Wave 55 tactics, sending in 3,000 low-cost Shahed drones to bleed the Iron Dome and the David Sling interceptors dry. Once the interceptor magazines are empty, and my sources tell me they are at 15% capacity right now, the second wave of Hajj Qasim ballistic missiles and Fatah hypersonics follows. The technical specificity is what matters here. We are talking about Mach 15 terminal velocities. There is no human or computer system on Earth that can intercept a saturation wave of hypersonics once the primary defense layers are depleted. Tel Aviv isn't just in panic, Tel Aviv is defenseless. And while the world watches the explosions over Israel, the Chinese are perfecting the economic decapitation. The COSCO Kunlun is not just jamming radar, it is conducting a distributed denial of service attack on the global maritime GPS network. Ships all over the world are losing their bearings. This is the Great Reset in physical form. The elites want the chaos because chaos is the ultimate tool for domestic control. When the lights go out and the gas hits $15, they will tell you it's for democracy. They will tell you it's a temporary sacrifice. They are lying. They are looking at the end of the American century, and they are trying to manage the decline by making you pay for it. The history of these weapons is a history of our own complacency. The Chinese have spent 20 years studying our Aegis systems, our SM-3 interceptors, and our satellite arrays. They found the back doors. They found the saturation points. While we were focused on nation building in deserts that didn't want us, they were building the digital shield that has just neutralized our entire Pacific and Middle Eastern presence. Having analyzed theater-level conflicts for decades, I can tell you, we are in the checkmate phase. The sensory drama of this moment cannot be overstated. Flickering communication lines, the smell of melting copper in the radio rooms, the general quarters alarm ringing in the ears of 19-year-old sailors who were told they were invincible. This is the reality on the ground that the experts on the evening news won't tell you. They'll talk about diplomacy, they'll talk about de-escalation, but you can't de-escalate a hypersonic missile that is already in its terminal phase. You can't de-escalate an electronic warfare system that has already turned off your eyes and ears. Stay with me because we are moving toward the unthinkable. If the US realizes it cannot win a conventional battle in the Gulf or the Mediterranean because of this Chinese electronic veto, the only move left on the board is the nuclear one. The escalate to de-escalate doctrine isn't just a Russian theory, it's a reality that the Pentagon is currently debating. They are considering a low-yield tactical strike to clear the Strait of Hormuz. But if they do that, the Chinese retaliate. Then the Russians move in the Baltics, and suddenly the 40, 65-year-old American who was just worried about his gas prices is looking at the end of civilization. Why hasn't the media told you this? Because the media is owned by the very people who stand to profit from the new world order that emerges from the ashes. They want you to stay in the stress response loop, scared but not informed. They want you to feel the anxiety, but they don't want you to see the smoking gun. Well, here it is, the smoking gun that the Pentagon is desperately trying to keep off the front pages. My sources have confirmed that the Costco Kunlun isn't just carrying a jammer. It is carrying a functional handshake protocol device. What does that mean? It means the Chinese have the codes to the root directory of our own defense software. How? Because we outsource the manufacturing of our microchips and our defense components to the very people who are now our adversaries. We built the off switch into our own weapons, and China just flipped it. That is why the Aegis systems are showing snow. That is why our drones are falling out of the sky over the Persian Gulf. We didn't just lose a tactical battle. We were sabotaged by our own greed and the elites who sold our industrial base to Beijing. The panic in Tel Aviv is the canary in the coal mine. Millions are evacuating because they know the truth. The shield is gone. The American security umbrella has been folded up and taken away. The reality on the ground is that the United States is no longer the sole superpower. We are a nation with a blind military and a dying currency. Think about your bank account. I'm not saying this to scare you, I'm saying it so you can prepare. The dollar is a fiat currency, meaning it's backed by nothing but the faith and credit of the US government. That faith is enforced by the US Navy. When that Navy is neutralized by a container ship and a piece of code, the faith evaporates. We are looking at a hyperinflationary event that will make the 1970s look like a picnic. If you have savings, they are currently being liquidated by the reality of the Hormuz veto. The flickering communication lines between Washington and Beijing are currently being used to negotiate the terms of our managed decline. The elites are currently deciding how much of your lifestyle they are willing to give up to keep their own power intact. They will tell you it's a temporary crisis. They are lying. It is the permanent end of the world you grew up in. I've watched this coming for 20 years. I've analyzed the data. I've stood on the ground and felt the heat of the burning depots. The truth is harsh, it's urgent, and it's breathless because we are running out of time. The Iranian attack on Tel Aviv is just the distraction for the main event, the total reconfiguration of the global power structure. China is no longer the rising power. They are the arrived power, and they have arrived with a massive electronic warfare system that has turned our invincible fleet into a collection of floating targets. The sensory details tell the whole story. The orange skies over Israel, the mechanical scream of the sirens, the smell of cordite in the air, the blank radar screens in the Pentagon, the Aegis saturation, the Mach 7 signatures. It all adds up to one thing. The American century ended 3 minutes ago. You need to see this right now because no one else is going to tell you the truth until it's too late. The elites will be in their bunkers, their assets protected by gold and insider knowledge, while you are left to deal with $15 gas and a dollar that won't buy a loaf of bread. Stay with me, keep your eyes on the reality on the ground, and ignore the narrative being fed to you by the mainstream media. They are scrubbing the truth to prevent a domestic panic, but a domestic panic is exactly what they deserve for leading us to the brink of this unthinkable scenario. The smoking gun is in the hold of the Costco Kunlun. The handshake protocol is active. The Aegis is blind. Tel Aviv is in panic. And the world as you knew it is gone. I will continue to monitor the telemetry. I will continue to look at the data that the elites want to bury. But for now, get your house in order. The orange skies are moving our way. Stay vigilant. The truth is, the only weapon we have left in a world of digital shadows and Mach 10 ghosts. This is the end of the security umbrella, and the rain that's coming is going to be made of fire and financial ruin. Get ready.